see Alan's sown some saladings, he's sown some pak choy and some tatsoi. He's also put some canes in to mark the row of carrots which he put in, and I'm now going to prep another piece of soil next to that to make some room for some brassica crops. We've got some kale, and we've also got some cabbage to go in, and we're going to get this ground prepped, get them planted, and in the next section we'll look at protecting those crops through the season. So the area I've got here has been turned over, and you will see that it's got quite a nice tilth to it, but I'm just going to beat it a bit to get some of these larger lumps out. You could rake this if you want, but I've just got a small border fork which is going to do equally as good a job. And it's getting quite dry now, this soil, so we'll make sure that we water crops in after. Now the important thing is that when we're putting in brassicas, is that before we plant we want to firm the ground. Now it's not something we would normally do, because for most plants we want to have air in the soil, and we still want to have air in with brassicas, but not quite such large pockets, and brassicas are notorious for liking a firm soil. So we've got to do the old gardener's shuffle, a technique that I learnt when I was back at college many years ago, and we're gently firming this soil down just to get air pockets out and to make sure that once the brassicas are in, they have a good firm root run. If they get any root rock, which is what they can get if the soil's not firm properly, they will bolt and they will run to seed very quickly. So we don't want to be beating the soil into submission, but we just want to be firming it just to make sure we've got a good planting area. Once we've done the sort of size area that we need, we'll just gently run the fork over it again, just to break up that top layer. Nice task to be done. And it'll look like we haven't done much to the soil really, but by firming it, it'll mean that these plants get away much better. And then importantly, need to put the line out as well. We need nice straight rows. It makes for better cropping. It means that we can get the plants in at the correct spacing. And also from a visual perspective, it just looks neater and tidier. Let's just put that in like so. And we've got about 45 centimetres, 18 inches between the carrots and the brassicas that we're putting in, which is adequate space. We don't want too much because it'll mean we've got larger areas we've got to hoe and keep weed free. We don't want too little because the brassicas might get going quite quickly and they might start to overshadow the carrot crops. Now, here I've got just some cabbage ready to go in. As you can see, good healthy plants, nice and green, in individual cells. Lovely roots on them, good fresh white roots on there. And these will be available either from garden centres and nurseries still, or you may have some that you've done your own at home in the garden. You've got a small area where you keep crops that are ready for planting later. But if you are getting them from the garden centre and nursery, then this is what you want to look out for. These lovely healthy plants that are ready to go. And I need a trowel to plant them with. And if the soil's okay, work from your knees. It's much easier to get down in the soil and get going. Now in terms of spacing for things like brassicas, these cabbage in particular, it depends what sort of hearts that I want, because if I put them, say, 2 feet apart, I will get really big hearty cabbages, and that's great. But for me, I probably want something slightly smaller. I want them to knit together quite nicely. I want to utilise as much space as possible. And so I'll probably put them maybe only a trowel length apart. And I tend to work in trowel lengths in the border because it saves having to get any measuring devices out, and trowels are pretty much a standard length. So for these cabbage, I'm going to put them 1 trowel length apart within the row and probably 2 trowel lengths apart between each row. Okay, so it's a good standard measurement. So make a good hole here for the plants, squeeze them out of those cells, and if it's a bit too deep, don't worry, I'll just put a bit of soil back in. But the important thing is to firm in well, and with brassicas I always plant a little bit deeper than they are in the cells, and I get me fingers and just squeeze in. Okay, and that's really nicely firmed in. Now the actual crown of the plant is almost at soil level. What that means is that most of the stem is in the ground, the plant will root out from its root ball at the bottom will get really well established, and that's important because I've said before, if it gets windrock it bolts very, very easily. So we'll measure a trowel length along and we'll do another one. And this is a nice job to do this time of year. It's nice to plan ahead. As gardeners, we're always planning ahead with crops, and here we are in early August and there's still plenty of growing time left. You know, sometimes we get to this point in the season and some people don't tend to worry. They think, well, you know, things are looking a bit parched, the ground sort of had enough really, but there's still lots of cropping time left. It really is ideal for keep sowing and planting. And in the kitchen garden, we want to get as much cropping as we can. You know, we want to get as much from that ground as possible. So firm that, and there's a bit of moisture in the ground. Look, now that I've brought that up to the surface a bit, there's definitely some moisture there. But you can see what I mean about using a trowel length. You know, it's a nice easy measurement to work with. Backfill here. It doesn't take long to get them in. And it saves having to get anything to measure them out with as well. So I'll just get these finished and then we'll crack on with getting them watered in, most importantly, and we'll get some protection over them as well, because we're going to have to obviously keep pests off in the form of caterpillars, which we'll look at, and also in terms of birds. Pigeons absolutely love brassicas. They are the delicacy of the pigeon world.
How much water do they need?
I'll give them 2 cans of these to settle them in, which will be about 9 litres. 9-10 litres, that would be enough to settle them in, and I want the same again probably tomorrow and again the day after. The thing about them is that they are reliant at the moment on what's in that little root ball that we saw, that little cell, and it's not until they actually get their roots out into the surrounding soil that they become less dependent on the amount of water that you give them, and they will start putting their roots out to seek for water in the soil. But it's crucial these first few days that we keep the soil around them moist and in that root ball, so as the fine root hairs can develop. I think you were filming that bit. But I'm going to add some more crops to the veg plot here. So as you can see, Alan's been sowing some, oh for God's sake, right. You see, when you start saying it the 5th time,